Tales from the Old Forest. Written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Chapter 6. The Great Ripiski.
A long, long time ago, beyond 7 mountains, beyond 7 rivers, the mouse people were as they are now, an unloved people.
Around the huge underground chamber, thousands of tiny black eyes sparkled like distant stars as they reflected the firelight, and every one of them was focused on the old storyteller in the center of the bowl-like cavern. Above them, winding in and out of the dark earth, were the roots of ancient trees, and Plentyn realized these must also be what were holding the soil above them from coming crashing down, like props and beams in an old mine. Perched on the pale roots, the dark shapes of the mice watching let out a squeaking sigh as Dedushka told the plight of their people in days gone by.
Wherever a humble and noble mouse would go, he would walk in fear, chased by the other forest creatures.
Another squeaking moan came from the crowd.
Trapped by the humans.
The crowd squeaked again, a larger and louder moan this time.
And worst of all,
the old mouse went on,
hunted.
At this, the crowd let out the biggest squeak yet, a long, mournful wail of lament. Despite the darkness, Plentyn saw one mouse faint into a swoon against its neighbour dramatically, clearly caught up in all the excitement. Plentyn suspected it had wanted attention, but it didn't get it. Instead, its neighbour shoved it away, eyes still fixed on Dedushka, and the fainter sat up again, looking sheepish.
The owl, the hawk, the eagle, Dedushka went on, the fox, the ferret, the snake, all of these would hunt the mouse people. Still, to this day, we fear these wily hunters stalking us by day and by night. All of us in this chamber will know of those who have been taken by these monsters of land and of air.
Around the cavern, Plentyn could see that was true. Several of the mice were looking down, sadly, clutching tiny paws before their hearts or faces. He even saw 1 or 2 wiping tears away from their dark eyes with their tails.
But by far, our most ancient enemy, the one we fear and flee the most, is the cat.
Again there was a squeaking wail from around the room, and the dramatic mouse took a second opportunity to faint, but was no more successful than the first time.
Yes, cried Dedushka, yes, my friends, we know it well. The cat, be it big or small, is the ancient foe of our people and the one we shall never defeat. Mother mice tucking their young pinky pups into the nest at night will tell them the old stories handed from parent to child and say those ancient words. Do not stray out of the shelter, my child, or the cat will catch you. The slashing claws, the flashing eyes, the deadly jaws.
Around the chamber, Plentyn saw several of the mice nodding along in time with the old mouse's words, and realized this really must be something that parents say to all their young in exactly the same tone, like an ancient ritual chant.
All mice know to fear this, and all mice have always feared this. Save one.
With this, the old storyteller's tone changed. Gone were the mournful, elegiac notes of before. Now he breathed life and hope into his words as he breathed life and hope into his hero.
Of all mice, there was one who overcame this terror, one who walked bravely where all others feared to tread, one who came face to face with our most ancient of enemies and lived to tell the tale, one who spoke with him and called him friend.
He was building now, and Plentyn could see every mouse in the chamber leaning forward, waiting for the hero's name to be unleashed.
And to us all his name is known, the boldest, the bravest of all mousekind, Ripiski the Great.
The cavern went wild. All around him, the mice let out squeaks and shrieks of delight, and once again Plentyn had to steady his mind against a barrage of sendings. The dramatic mouse clearly decided that this might finally be its moment and fell into a third faint. But it was clear it had lost faith in the concept, and it was half-hearted at best.
"Unfortunately," continued Didushka once the chamber had finally calmed, "when we first meet our hero Ripiski, he was an idiot."
It might have been Plentyn's imagination, but he could have sworn Didushka looked straight at the fainting mouse when he said this.
One day, young Ripiski, only a few weeks old and filled with the arrogance of youth, was darting here and there in the woods when he came across a lion.
As one, the mice in the chamber gasped in shock and horror.
Yes, my friends, the largest and most dangerous of the cats, and here one was, right in Ripiski's path. Well, what do you suppose Ripiski did? He did what all of us would do. He froze. He was behind the lion. There was no way he could be seen, and so he froze. And while he froze, he thought. As all good and wise mice know, Ripiski had but two choices. He must either stay still and silent until the lion moved on of his own accord, or else he must flee for his life and hope that the lion did not chase him. But as I said before, Ripiski was young and foolish, and he chose a third choice. Somewhere deep inside him, where most of us feel fear of the cats, Ripiski felt only curiosity. And as even the cats themselves will tell you, curiosity is a dangerous thing. Even now, it drove Ripiski to wonder. How lethal was this lion really? Surely he could not be as bad as all that. Surely his old mother was exaggerating when she spoke of the claws and eyes and jaws. He knew it was not wise, not as his elders would advise. But slowly, he crept towards the lion.
Around the chamber, the mice looked aghast at the very notion, and he saw some mice, he assumed they were parents, covering smaller mice's ears lest they take on the idea themselves.
Step by shaking step, Ripiski snuck towards the great cat. When he was just a whisker's length away, he stopped and waited. Nothing. The lion did not move. He crept ever closer. Still nothing. He reached out a paw and softly, ever so softly, he laid it on the great lion's tail. Still the creature did not move, but still Ripiski was not satisfied. The lion cannot feel me, he told himself, and with that he crept up the lion's tail and on to his back. Oh, lion, Ripiski thought to himself, you do not frighten me. You are no mighty hunter, for here I am sitting on your back and you have not even noticed. Emboldened now, Ripiski walked along the lion's spine and climbed up towards his great mane. All of my brothers and sisters fear you, O lion, thought Ripiski, but not I, for here I am on your mane, and yet you do not feel me. As before, the lion did not move, and so Ripiski climbed as far as he might dare, right up onto the lion's face, and there he saw it. The reason why the lion did not react. Its great eyes, each one larger than Ripiski himself, were closed, and the lion breathed low and deep in slumber. Ripiski's mind was light, and his heart was free. He did not even bother to keep his thoughts inside any longer, and he spoke out loud to the sleeping cat. Why should mousekind fear the like of lazy lions, who spend their days still and snoring? He leapt down off the lion's head and dodged between his paws, full of conviction that he, Ripiski, was the bravest of all mice. His curiosity finally satisfied, he turned to scurry away. Wham! The great lion's paw slammed down upon Ripiski's tail. Looking back, Ripiski saw the lion's eyes were still closed, and yet its paw held Ripiski fast. He was trapped.
Around the crowded cavern of mice there were no more cheers or moans or squeaking wails. All the mice were staring in horror at Dedushka as he brought to life what all of them had been taught to fear from birth.
My, said the lion to the captured mouse, finally opening his eyes to regard his prey. I seem to have captured a mere morsel. What was that I heard you say as you woke me? Something about lazy lions, was it? Oh, no, sir, said Ripiski. I would never say such a thing. All mousekind are taught to fear you, so I would never. Clearly you have not been taught that lesson well enough, said the lion, its eyes flashing just as the legends told. So now I will eat you, and no other mice will dare to be as brave or as foolish as you have been today. The slashing claws closed about him, and he was lifted into the air, the deadly jaws wide and leaning forward, ready to devour Ripiski once and for all. But, sir, cried Ripiski, that's not a good idea. The great lion paused, its eyes sparkling in amusement. Oh, he asked, and why is that little morsel? Well, sir, answered Ripiski, his mind racing, because no one is here to know of my story. So how will they know that none should copy my example? He answered. My foolish example, he corrected himself. Well, you have a point there, growled the lion thoughtfully, but not a good one. With you dead, there will be no brave mice left to bother me. Once again his great jaws spread wide, and he lunged forward. Ripiski thought his time was surely done, and he cried out in desperation, But you may one day have need of a brave mouse, he shouted, and if you eat me, then there shall be no more left to follow. A brave mouse? Asked the lion, a laugh in his voice. Why would I ever need a brave mouse? Because one day I could help you, Ripiski stammered, desperately thinking, and no other mouse would have been brave enough to come near you. The lion roared with laughter. You help me? And how might a tiny morsel help a mighty lion like me? I could, began Ripiski. I could. He tried again. I don't know, he confessed eventually. He could not think of a single way he could possibly help a lion. His mind finally giving up on him, Ripiski shut his eyes and waited for the deadly jaws to do their work. But the jaws did not come. Instead, Ripiski found himself being placed gently to the ground. I do not know how you may be able to help me either, said the lion, but I am curious to find out if such a day might ever come. I will let you free, young morsel. May you never be so foolish as to trouble a sleeping lion ever again. And with that, Ripiski was free and ran off into the undergrowth, feeling very lucky to be alive and determined not to be so brave ever again.
Around the underground cavern, Plentyn saw mice breathing sighs of relief at their hero having narrowly evaded death.
Time passed as time is accustomed to do, Dedushka continued, and Ripiski grew older and wiser. He was still brave, but he became less foolish by far. Some months later he was scurrying through the forest, darting from shelter to shelter, when he heard a great lion roaring. This was no roar of laughter this time, but a roar of pain and panic and, though Ripiski could hardly believe it, fear. What in all the world could be so terrible that a great lion might fear it? Again, that old curiosity overcame him, and Ripiski crept closer to the sound. Keeping to the shadows and the cover of leaves, Ripiski saw. It was the very same lion, for he would never forget that creature as long as he lived. But now it was in quite a different situation. Where before it had seemed bold and noble and wild, now it was caught and snared, all tangled up in a hunter's trap. Despite the lion's great size and great strength, the more he struggled, the more trapped he became. As before, Ripiski froze, and as before, he faced a choice. He had not yet been seen, and if he so desired, he could stay hidden until the hunter collected the lion, or he could turn to run. No one in Mousekind would have blamed him. The cats are the ancient enemy of all mice, and one less upon this earth may have been no bad thing. But if there is one other thing all mice know, it is the fear of being trapped.
Around the cavern, mice were nodding to themselves again. Clearly traps were just as frightening as cats.
All of us here have known the fear of a trap. All of us here have lost friends and family to traps. So it was with Ripiski. He saw the lion, trapped as it was, and he saw it too knew this fear, and his heart broke for the creature. So, just as before, Ripiski chose a third choice, and he crept forward.
Around the chamber, the mice were leaning forward again, clearly caught up in the action once more.
Now this was not without danger to Ripiski, Dedushka went on. The hunter may catch him on his return. Another creature may swipe at him while he was out of his shelter. Even the lion himself, with its wild thrashing in its snare, may trample or slash at him, and yet still he went on. He called out to the lion, "O great lion, please be still, I am here to help." In the midst of its panic, Ripiski was worried the lion had not heard him, but as he crept still closer, the lion saw him from the corner of his eye and looked over. "Please, be still for a moment," Ripiski asked the lion. "I need to see how this trap has been constructed, that I might know how best I can help you." The lion's mouth was muzzled by the trap, so he could not reply, but at Ripiski's request he went still, though his eyes darted around, searching for the returning hunter on his way to collect his prize. Ripiski worked quickly and scanned the snare to see if it had a weak point. And there it was. Simple pieces of rope holding much of the trap together. "Hold on," Ripiski cried. "I shall free you." He darted up the lion's trapped foreleg and hurriedly set to work at the rope that held the lion fast, gnawing away with his teeth. After what seemed like an age, the rope gave way and the lion had one paw free. Ripiski scanned around to see the next rope and set to work with a will. Soon the lion had another paw free, and Ripiski found a third rope. In moments the third paw was free, but now Ripiski could hear the footsteps of menfolk walking closer through the forest. The lion gave him a look of desperate supplication, and Ripiski threw himself at the fourth and final rope. The hunters walked back around the corner to the quarry, but all they found was an empty trap.
Around the chamber, the assembled mice gave another great cheer, rejoicing at the success of their hero. Dedushka smiled at them, raising his hands for quiet so he could finish the story properly.
"And so it was," the old mouse concluded, "that Ripiski the brave hero freed the lion from his snare, and thereafter the lion and he became friends. That lion never lifted his paw against any of Mousekind again, and held friendship with Ripiski, and Ripiski's children, and Ripiski's children's children until the end of his days."
With that, Dedushka's story finally came to a close, and all around the chamber there was a contented silence. All the mice looked down on the old storyteller with joy and gratitude, and after some time, a cheer went up in thanks. "My thanks for a tale well told, Dedushka," said Grandma, a beaming smile drawing her wrinkles ever deeper, her purple-green eyes gleaming. This truly was a tale of great kindness, and a testimony that all of us, no matter our size or strength, have the power to change a life with a simple act of kindness."
"Indeed, Maximilia," Dedushka agreed. "In fact, some might say that it was precisely because Ripiski was much smaller that his act of kindness meant so much more."
He turned from Grandma and addressed the great cavern of watching mice.
"Any creature can show kindness when they risk nothing to do so,"
he said to his crowd, addressing them like a preacher with an ardent congregation.
"But it is a noble creature who still shows kindness when they know it will cost them, when they know it will require taking a risk, when they know it will mean facing danger. This is the lesson we must take from the tale of Ripiski."
"Feel the fear and do it anyway, that's what I always say," said Grandma, and Dudushka nodded again. "That was a fantastic story, Brother Mouse," said Hopper, and Plentyn jumped a little, remembering he was there. He'd been so caught up in Dudushka's tale that he'd quite forgotten the kangaroo was beside him. "Yes," agreed Red, "good story." Her little head cocked to the side slightly as she formed a question. "It's true?" Dudushka smiled at her warmly, his beetle-black eyes crinkling in a way that reminded Plentyn of Grandma.
"Sister Squirrel," he began, "I swear that every word was exactly as the legend has been passed down for generations."
An idea seemed to strike him, though, and he glanced at Grandma as he went on.
"But if there is any doubt, why do you not go and ask the lions themselves? This story is not ours alone, and they will tell you all just as I have said it."
Plentyn was a little taken aback at this idea. Spending time with Red, Hopper, and an excitable horde of mice was one thing, but lions were... well, they were lions. He remembered what Grandma had said about needing to be on guard around predators, and the thought sent a shiver down his spine. On his knee, Red looked quite nervous about the idea as well, and Hopper piped up from beside him, "I'm not sure that's the best." "What a splendid idea!" cried Grandma, cutting Hopper off. "I was wondering where might be best to head next on our travels, and it's been a great many years since I last walked among the prides."
"Excellent," replied Dudushka. "And if you are to go, then we must send the delegate of mouse kind along with you in order to keep you safe from harm." His old eyes crinkled again with another laugh. "We will send you with one of our bravest and most respected warriors." He turned to the Hall of Mice, calling out, "Maximus, come forth!" At this, all the mice began squeaking and shuffling again excitedly. Clearly this Maximus was a character they all knew, a modern-day Ripiski himself. Plentyn imagined a giant of a mouse, almost the size of a rat, striding boldly through the sea of rodents to cheers and adulation. The mice on the ground parted, making way for Maximus to approach. But where Plentyn had expected to see a huge, hulking mouse, there was instead the tiniest little harvest mouse that Plentyn had ever seen. It was shorter than his little finger and no wider than his thumb. But still, this must be the mighty Maximus from the way the other mice deferred to him. The tiny creature reached the front of the crowd, standing on his hind legs, and bowed neatly. "Maximus," Dudushka addressed the newcomer warmly, "you are to go with our guests here and travel to the lions. Be bold, be brave, and represent mouse-kind well." He nodded his head warmly at the tiny creature, and again Maximus bowed. He turned to Plentyn and the others and bowed stiffly to them as well. "Honor," sent Maximus. To Plentyn's surprise, Grandma bowed back just a little and replied formally, "Welcome, Maximus, warrior of Mousekind. We are truly honored to have you accompany us in this stage of our journey. Will you walk alongside us, or would you prefer to be carried?" Red seemed to bristle at this, worried she would lose her customary seat on Plentyn's shoulder, but she needn't have worried. Maximus scanned the group, a calculating look on his tiny face, and eventually scurried over to Hopper. "All right?" he asked the kangaroo. "Climb aboard, mate,"
Hopper replied, giving one of his customary little winks, his ears twitching in amusement. Wasting no time, Maximus darted onto Hopper's long foot and bustled up his leg onto his torso. In the dim light, the tiny shape blended into Hopper's fur perfectly, and it was only his industrious movement that gave his location away at all. In a few seconds he emerged on Hopper's head, perched neatly between his ears. "This good," said the little mouse, nodding to himself. "This good, apparently," echoed Hopper, a slight chuckle to his tone. "Indeed it is good," agreed Grandma. "And now I believe we must be on our way." She turned to Dudushka and smiled fondly at the old mouse. "It has been a pleasure to come and see you again, my old friend, and thank you for your hospitality."
"You are always welcome, Maximilia," the storyteller replied. "Come, I will lead you to the exit myself."
Showing surprising speed, the old mouse set off ahead of them towards a nearby tunnel, and Plentyn and the others followed behind. Once again there was that eerie feeling of stretched time as they fumbled in the darkness, but before too long they halted as Dudushka addressed them.
"And here we must part ways," sent the old mouse, "for ours is to live in secret, whereas yours is to wander boldly under the sky. Farewell, my friends."
And with that they were out of the tunnel and into the day again, blinking in the sunlight. The door behind them was just about to close when Plentyn had a thought and turned to Grandma to ask the question. "Why did you say we weren't to mention cheese, though?" he asked. He had thought his voice was quite low and for Grandma's ears alone, but apparently he was wrong. On Hopper's head, Maximus stiffened, a strange gleam entering his wide eyes. In the doorway, Dudushka's head shot up and he let out a curse.
"Bozha moi!"
Plentyn's voice seemed to ricochet down the tunnel ahead of him. Despite all the other words he had said, only one seemed to be carrying down to the cavern below. "Cheese, ease, ease, ease." It went on, echoing into the darkness. Grandma looked at him, her eyes wide open in alarm. All of them stood in silent shock, until that silence shattered. From beneath them, the whole cavern of mice seemed to react as one. "Cheese!" came an almighty sending, swiftly followed by the thrumming of thousands of tiny paws scrabbling beneath them. Plentyn's eyes were wide now too as he stared back at Grandma in alarm. The scurrying feet were getting closer, hurtling up the tunnel towards them. "Cheese!" sent 1,000 tiny mines. "You've done it now, lad," croaked Grandma. Dudushka turned back to them, triggering the door closed with some hidden mechanism. "Go!" he sent frantically. "Go!" As the tree trunk sealed shut, they heard hundreds of small shapes crashing into it and scrabbling wildly to be free. Sendings of "cheese" still coming plaintively through the door. "Come on, lad," chided Grandma, shaking Plentyn from his shock. She steered him by his elbow as she began striding on, setting a steady pace. Plentyn was confused. "What just—" "Don't ask about it," Grandma interrupted. "Not just yet, anyway. They've got ears half the size of their bodies, and they'll hear you long after you think they won't," she warned. "You all right back there, Maximus?" she asked the tiny mouse. "I know you kept your head when all around you lost theirs." "I strong," came Maximus's reply, though looking closely, Plentyn saw he still seemed to be holding himself very stiffly indeed. The 5 of them walked on, following Grandma for a good while longer, but eventually they were forced to find a place to make camp. The sun, already dipping when they had gone into the mouse realm, was finally falling below the horizon. As they sat round their fire, their bellies pleasantly full, Plentyn ventured to ask. "So how come they reacted like that to—" he dropped his voice still lower. "Cheese, then?" To his left, Maximus twitched as he nibbled a seed, but gave no other reaction. Across the fireside, Grandma grinned. "Well, I suppose it's safe enough now," she said, her eyes sparkling in the firelight. "For most mice, cheese is just about the most desirable substance in all creation, and it's rare as hen's teeth." "Rare?" asked Plentyn. "How is cheese rare when you can get it anywhere?" "You can get it anywhere," Grandma interrupted, "because it's a man-made substance and you are a man." She gave him an appraising look. "Or you will be in a few more years' time, anyhow. The point is, it's common for menfolk because it's easy enough to make with clever hands and these posable thumbs. She waved her hands in front of her. But it's a darn sight harder to make if you're a mouse, and believe me, they have tried. Well, surely they can get hold of it, Plentyn asked. Like trade or something? They do when they can, said Grandma, but there ain't many traders come to the old forest, lad. I've worked hard to be sure of it. And when they do get hold of some, she drew in a sharp breath and kissed her teeth. Let's just say it's better if the stuff doesn't come their way, she finished. Wars have been fought between mouse tribes over the stuff. You must be joking, Plentyn scoffed, thinking she was making fun of him. Surely there haven't been wars fought over a block of— Maximilian make no joke, sent Maximus, cutting him off. He was perched on a tree branch near the fire, the seed he'd been chewing on now discarded. Cheese brings war, said the small warrior. Much fighting, very bad. There was a haunted look in his little eyes as he stared into the fire without blinking. Red gawped at him, mouth open, and Hopper looked down at him sadly. I'm sorry, said Plentyn, not quite sure what else he could offer. Maximus shook his head kindly. No sorry, no need. He fell silent again until Grandma broke it. You didn't know, lad, and perhaps that's my fault for not forewarning you properly. I knew where we was going, but I didn't give you all the information you might need, so how can any of us be surprised if you stumble into a blunder, eh? You must forgive an old woman her oversights, I fear, she said. Plentyn was sure she was taking responsibility for the error to spare his blushes, but he was grateful for it nonetheless. Now, said Grandma, changing tone, we should all try and get a few winks of sleep, I think. Big day of adventure awaits us in the morning. Tomorrow we enter the lion's den, she said with a chuckle. They all settled into comfy positions around the fire, Plentyn pulling up his hood and shiggling into the woolen cloak he'd come to love, Red curling up on his chest. To his left, Maximus had also curled up, his slim tail wrapping around himself, and he was already breathing deeply in sleep. Behind him, Hopper stretched out on his side, sighing softly. Plentyn lay back, certain he wouldn't sleep a wink. But as he stared at the stars through the canopy above him, his eyes began to sag, his mind grew muzzy, and sleep reached out to claim him. Thanks for listening. Tales from the Old Forest was a Settle Stories commission. Written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Story editor was Miriam Sarin. Intro music was Adventure is Calling by Vens Adams. Outro music was Conquest of Paradise by Simon Folwar. It was a Parable Arts production.